Hello, everybody. I hope you're well. So my name is Matthew Griffin, and welcome to my virtual studio, which, if it shouldn't be lost on anybody, we couldn't have done this 10 years ago. So if we'd had a pandemic 10 years ago, we wouldn't be communicating in this kind of way. And I certainly wouldn't be streaming to you in 4K, high def, etc., etc., etc. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be taking you through what I call predicting the disruptive future. There's this kind of misnomer today that you can't predict disruption. You can. And I'm going to show you how, I'm going to show you where it's coming from, and I'm going to show you disruption's face, literally. So here we go.
Today we're all being disrupted. And I'm not just talking about by digital humans like myself with our conversational artificial intelligence, state-of-the-art high-def rendering, and neural networks for brains.
So that's Anna. She's my digital human. She cost me about 30 cents to make. Now, 2 years ago, I couldn't have made her. 5 years ago, I definitely couldn't have made her. Now, she's disruptive. So when we look at digital humans, when we have a look at synthetic content, it's all disruptive. But as investors, you've got two opportunities. You can see this as a threat, both as individuals and investors, to be fair. So you can look at Anna replacing you in your place of work. Now, Anna and her colleagues are already being signed by Sony and Warner Music, for example. She's taking over corporate communications with companies like WPP. She's starting to appear on Reuters news desks and all these kinds of other things. So you can see her as a threat. Alternatively, you can see her as an opportunity. It depends on your perspective. It depends which side of the fence you're looking at. So she also has the ability to disrupt, according to McKinsey, the $5 trillion creative market. That employs 235 million people. So if you own Anna as a digital asset, if she's a pop star, you own her forever and all her works and lyrics. Think of Taylor Swift in digital form. K-pop are now starting to use characters like Anna in their own music production and so on and so forth. So how you see the future very much depends on your perspective. Threat. Every threat is an opportunity. And when we talk about disruption, everything is being disrupted. And I'll take you through all these different things. If you think about the start of the year, this time last year, I was presenting on screens that were 60 foot high, 100 foot wide, everything from an IMAX, basically in London, all the way through to stages in Goa in India. But now I'm coming at you instead, basically on your iPads, your smartphones, basically your company laptops, which are much, much smaller screens. And from my perspective, I could either be coming at you in a tiny zoom window, which would be this little sort of rectangle up here, or something like this. You've got to be adaptable if you're going to be able to embrace the future and really make hay when the sun shines. So as a futurist, I often face this. It's less true now. It certainly used to be true about 10 years ago. Something I call the time traveler's dilemma. If I went back to the 1970s or 1980s and I talked about this thing called the internet in the future, revolutionizing every single corner of society, I'll show you what happens in a moment. If I went back and had conversations with every automotive manufacturer 7 to 10 years ago and I said, by 2020, you'll be spending hundreds of billions of dollars building fully autonomous cars that drive themselves, that you no longer sell to customers, and you're going to spend further hundreds of billions of dollars electrifying them, I would have been shown the futurist equivalent of the door, an airlock. And increasingly, more and more people are now starting, particularly executives, are starting to get used to this concept of disruption as usual. We are no longer living in business as usual times. And when we have a look at disruption, disruption today is faster than ever before, simply because if you have a digital product or service, if you can get that in front of the 3.5 billion people who are connected on the internet, you can all of a sudden do game-changing things. If you have a look at the telephone took 75 years to be adopted by 50 million people. Pokemon Go basically was just a couple of weeks. Call of Duty took 6 days to be downloaded and accessed by 100 million people. We are already at the point, though, when you can disrupt global society and global industries in a day. An example of that is Facebook Libra. Had it been approved for use by the world's governments, basically, who saw it as an existential threat to their own state-backed money, you could have disrupted the global financial system and the global financial status quo in one day, because it could have been published at 9 o'clock on a morning, PST, and a couple of hours later it could be being used by 50, 100, 2, 3, 4, 500 million people. The pace of disruption, particularly with digital technologies, is absolutely staggering. And as businesses and investors, basically, you need to be able to try to keep up with these things, and it's increasingly complex and it's increasingly difficult because there is so much change coming from so many different areas and quarters and sectors. It's very difficult, basically, to try to get a universal view. And that's why I'm here. When we have a look at the different technologies that we can leverage to start creating the new game-changing and disruptive products and services of tomorrow, there's plenty to pick from. So this is my starburst. It's organized by technology category because if you're going to make tomorrow's products, you need to be able to manufacture them, connect them, power them. You need the right materials. You increasingly want to add intelligence into them. You want user interfaces. You might want robotics in there and all kinds of different things. So each of these individual technologies is what we call an exponential technology. I track over 450. There are 180 on this particular starburst. And the reason why there's only 180 on the starburst is because that's all I can fit in. Every single dot represents when these technologies are estimated to be commercially mature and adoptable. And each individual technology has at least an AMO of over $500 billion and or can revolutionize and disrupt either one industry or every industry. Think about artificial intelligence. It's a general purpose technology. It can disrupt everything. Whereas 3D printing can disrupt the $10 trillion manufacturing industry. So on this, we have all kinds of new technologies emerging, everything from artificial intelligences that are made from DNA and glass, as well as neural networks and all the things that we hold dear. Computing, we have quantum computers coming through that are 100 million times more powerful than anything that we have today. And those will be commercially available really in the next couple of years. We have 3D printing, which of course can revolutionize basically how we manufacture goods and services. Rather than making goods and services in China, if I'm Adidas, I can 3D print or holographically print, which is another very fast 3D printing technology, all my products in the back of my store. So all of a sudden, I'm decentralizing manufacturing, I'm democratizing manufacturing, and as a retailer, it allows me to get rid of all of my inventory. And if I put a fancy interface on it, as Adidas and Nike do, you can design your own products, you can print them off in the back of the store on demand, and I can charge you more for those products because they're personalized. So I won't go through this starburst now because we'll run out of time, but if you go to the website and go to 311institute.com/explore, you can download the codex and you can just mooch it at your leisure. But as you can see, there are an infinite number of different ways that we can combine all these different technologies together to create new products and services. And that's what makes disruption increasingly complex. Now, when we start digitizing individual industries, companies, and sectors, the boundaries between them all also dissolve and eliminate. So, for example, if you're going to have a conversation with a retailer and you say to that retailer today, what industry are you in? They will tell you they're in the retail industry. If you have a conversation with a manufacturing company, they will say they're in the manufacturing industry. But here's the thing. When we talk about mindset and how you look at the future, if I go and have a conversation with a technology company, bearing in mind we are all becoming technology companies, a technology company like Fatbag, so Facebook, Alibaba, Tencent, Apple, Amazon, Google, however you sort of want to put those acronyms together, they will just simply say, we're in every industry. And they are. So your new competitors are people that have never competed with you before. They're in adjacent industries coming in. Google is making self-driving cars, which competes with the automotive industry and so on and so forth. They're a search engine, for heaven's sake. However, when we start talking about accelerating this pace of change, bearing in mind it's already fast and it's getting faster and more disruptive, we now have artificial intelligences, they're called creative machines, that are able to make, design and innovate products on our behalf. So I call it innovation with an AI. So today these machines are quite good at iterative innovation, but in about the next 5 years they will get incredibly good at primary and disruptive innovation. And this is where, for example, a creative machine can identify a problem to solve, ideate solutions, they can then form their own solutions, prototype them, and then manufacture them on demand. Now, this is one particular technology. This is a simulation technology that allows us to accelerate the global rate of innovation by 100 million-fold. And it's using artificial intelligences. We've got a variety of different ways we can use these machines, but this is one of my favorite ones because it's fast. This is how we manufacture the world's most dexterous robot in weeks, not years or decades.
We're trying to build robots that learn a little bit like humans do, by trial and error. What we've done is trained an algorithm to solve the Rubik's Cube one-handed with a robotic hand, which is actually pretty hard even for a human to do. We don't tell it how the hand needs to move the cube in order to get there. The particular friction that's on the fingers, how easy it is to turn the faces on the cube, what the gravity, what the weight of the cube is, all of these things, it needs to learn by itself. The interesting thing is that kind of standard techniques in robotics haven't been able to scale to that complexity that we see in a robotic hand. Humans have evolved to be able to manipulate and operate our hands. So there's a huge amount of learning that's happened through evolution to get us to this point as a species. And the robot has to learn all of this from scratch. Instead of trying to write very dedicated algorithms to operate such a hand, we took a different approach where we create thousands of different simulated environments and learn to do the task in all of those, and hopefully a robotic hand will be able to do it in the real world as well. This means like thousands of years of experience that this neural network has had in simulation. Every time the algorithm has gotten good at the task, we make the task harder. That's really crucial because it needs exposure to really complicated environments in order to eventually be robust to the real world.
So that is just one example of how we used a creative machine and artificial intelligence in simulation to design the world's most dexterous robot hand that can solve a Rubik's Cube in a minute, one-handed, in weeks. And that was thousands of years of simulation crammed into weeks. Now, when we start having a look at other products that are being built in this way, we have the new A330neo from Airbus that is being designed by artificial intelligence. We have in silico's artificial intelligence that designed 30,000 new drugs, basically in 21 days. Incredible speed. Remember, we are accelerating here with these machines. We have NASA, who built a new lunar rover, which was 30% lighter than anything else that JPL's scientists could put together. And then, of course, we have Under Armour, who used these artificial intelligences to design the Architect sneaker, which is a $300 sneaker you can buy online, that was then 3D printable. Now, the importance of these different technologies is this. They help cut down the concept to shelf time by up to 99%. Another example, Toyota recently used these machines to design a new EV battery. Electric vehicle batteries, lithium-ion batteries, typically take 2 years to develop and test. Toyota did it in 16 days. We are accelerating. And then when we start having a look at content, these machines are also creating content, everything basically from music and art, all the way through to digital life like avatars, books, videos, video games. We start accelerating not just one area of innovation, we accelerate every area of innovation. And so when we start having a look at individual sort of themes, fighting climate change, we have the technologies today to eliminate over 70% of all greenhouse gas emissions. So this one helps us solve famine as well, bearing in mind that the raising of meat is typically accounts for about 15 to 17% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. This is using one of the technologies I mentioned, bioreactors. You might know this as clean meat or lab meat.
We've all been there, right? In the grocery store. Oh, I'll just buy this meat. And there it is. And all we have to do is buy it. We don't have to think about what it took to make that chicken in that nice packaging. But the reality of the way that it came about, it's incredibly unsustainable. And that's one of the biggest problems facing humanity right now. But we figured out a way to solve it. The whole idea is that that chicken in itself has an unlimited source of itself, and there is a way where you can take just a handful of cells and keep growing them essentially infinitely. For those very first cells, it was important to us how we got the cells, not just that we got the cells. We came up with the idea to use one feather from the single best chicken that we could find.
We picked out.
The first thing we need to do is we need to identify a cell that we are going to use as the basic starter material. And then what we need to do is find a food for it to grow in. So we have to identify the right set of nutrients that will cause the cells to multiply, but not just multiply, but do so quickly and into high densities.
Wake up, I wanna lift you up, I wanna dress you up, let's be friends.
It was an out-of-body experience to sit there and eat a chicken, but have the chicken that you're eating running around in front of you. You don't imagine doing something like that.
So, for example, that individual technology that I was talking to the UAE Foreign Ministry about 3 years ago turns the UAE and the GCC from net food importers to potential exporters. We have vertical farms. So on Sheikh Zayed Road, basically, as well as in Masdar, basically, we have vertical farms. But vertical farms are going fully autonomous. And again, these cut out a huge...
We started with the question,
gas emissions again.
what if we could grow better produce for everyone? Because when it comes to locally grown food, quality shouldn't be a luxury, and quantity shouldn't be a compromise. At Ironox, we're using robotics and intelligence to grow better food for less, in a way that uses less. Less of what we can't get back, or can't afford to waste. Ironox grows a perfect head, year-round. We're increasing access to premium produce for everyone.
99% less water usage, 8 crops a year, fully organic, no pesticides, etc., etc. Just those 2 slides there, we've reduced greenhouse gas emissions by over 20%. When we start having a look at electricity generation, which accounts for about another 20%, we have 1 trillion watts of renewable energy installed out of an energy mix of 6 trillion watts globally. We can already see the way to wean ourselves off fossil fuels and move to renewables, basically, as well as polymer-based energy solutions, as well as hydrogen, biohybrid solutions. In the energy sector, there is a huge amount of innovation. So I'm going to focus a little bit on two or three. So we have wireless charging, for example. Wireless charging eliminates the need for overhead pylons. And we have a whole variety of new solutions coming out over in New Zealand that mean you don't need to dig up the mountains to lay cables any longer. We have virtual power plants. California no longer builds power plants. They invest in virtual power plants where you aggregate lots of different renewable technology sources together. And when we start having a look at solar, we've got the big solar farms, basically in the UAE, so up to 6 gigawatts of solar. At the moment, silicon solar panels are 17% efficient. Perscovite, up to 32% efficient. Bacterial solar panels can generate electricity in the rain. They're up to 50% efficient. If you reclaim the heat in the solar panels, they're 80% efficient. And then if you use black silicon, you have solar panel technologies that are up to 132% efficient, which is actually possible. Those are already starting to come through. At this point, the cost of energy generation is basically zero. It's like 9 to 10 zeros, basically with a 1 after it, after a full dot. We can generate electricity today thanks to we put a layer of graphene over a solar panel. You can generate electricity in rain and snow using new materials like nanophotonic materials, which catch the very short wavelengths of light. You can generate electricity from moonlight, lunar solar panels. And then when we have a look at hydrogen, over in the UAE again, we have flying taxis. This is one from Sky. Most flying taxis use lithium-ion batteries. This is actually hydrogen powered. It's got a 400-kilometer range, and of course hydrogen at the moment is 10 times more energy dense than lithium-ion. But when we start talking about 3D printing lithium-ion batteries, we can start balancing that out. But the energy future is incredible. In addition to that, when you have a look at reducing greenhouse gas emissions further, concrete production accounts for about 10% of all greenhouse gas emissions. We have green concrete that eliminates those greenhouse gas emissions. And we can go on and on. We have artificial intelligence that can optimize energy usage in the grid, smart cities, smart homes, you name it. There is so much going on. It's incredible. When we have a look at fighting aging and disease, this is not a smartphone. This is a tricorder. With artificial intelligence, the sensors in it, with the cameras, the microphone, the accelerometers in it, I can use this device today to diagnose dementia, PTSD, skin cancer, pancreatic cancer. I can put this on my chest and I can detect whether or not basically I have the onset of early stage heart disease. I can talk into the microphone and it can tell me whether or not I'm depressed by the way that I talk and the way that I hold the device. These disrupt primary and secondary healthcare, and we are just getting started on these. So think about COVID's impact on telemedicine and telehealth, and then think about this thing on steroids. We are decentralizing different products and different healthcare products and services. In addition to that, by 2028, most biotech and healthcare companies, because of the advances in different biotech technologies, are now for the very first time starting to talk about their ability to conquer death. That's where, for example, in 2028, we add more than a year's worth of life to everybody's lives for a year that they've lived. Artificial intelligence and supercomputers this year meant that vaccines that normally take 10 years to produce took 10 months. That was unthinkable 2 years ago. We're accelerating. We have 3D printed hearts and body organs, everything from contacts and cataracts all the way through to bone, skin, livers, kidneys. And these are still maturing, but we're already using 3D printed bone and skin in cancer treatments and a whole variety of other places. They're already being commercialized. We can use gene editing tools, basically like zinc fingers, as well as CRISPR, to edit your genome in vivo. So if you have an inherited genetic disease, we can use these powerful gene editing tools today to edit that disease right out of your genome. We've done that with Hunter's syndrome. And there are 6,000 other diseases that we can cure or treat in this way. And then in addition to that, when we start having a look at the field of automation and robotics, we have machines building machines. So we have artificial intelligences, for example, from Google, OpenAI, Microsoft, as well as others that are designing new child artificial intelligences that are 30% more effective at what they've been designed to do than anything that human experts put together. And of course, they can do this at pretty much light speed. We have artificial intelligences that are now curious, and that's important later on. So remember that one. Artificial intelligences that literally create their own problems and then learn new ways to solve them. So that helps the innovation space. It also has an impact on cybersecurity. We have evolutionary robotics, which again basically is where we are starting to take different robotic codes and try to merge them together. You can quite literally think of this as providing robots with a way or a path to evolve in the same way that animals and organisms have for billions of years. In addition to that, when you connect whether they are software robots or hardware robots together into the cloud and use artificial intelligence, you create a hive mind economy. So I can teach one robot here to do something, or one system here to do something, or a self-driving car here to do something, and its knowledge will propagate throughout the entire network. So the hive mind economy fundamentally changes, basically, again, not only the speed and pace of disruption, but the opportunities as well. We have the rise of fully autonomous companies, particularly in Asia and over on Wall Street in the financial services and communications sectors. These are autonomous companies that are designed and run by artificial intelligences. That's a whole other conversation as well. And then when you start looking at the future of robotics combined with 5G, when I was out in Abu Dhabi last, basically we talked about turning some of the Emirates Towers basically into surgical centers that then allow you to use this type of technology to operate on people all around the world using 5G. This is disrupting healthcare and decentralizing surgery. So in that example, we are performing surgery on people who are either tens or hundreds of miles away. When we have a look at cyber, so the cyber landscape is evolving at a furious rate. Today, I can change the pixel basically on a radiograph and the artificial intelligence, and I can make the artificial intelligence think that you don't have cancer when you do. Adversarial attacks. We can code malware into DNA to hack police forensics labs, as we already have. Quantum computers basically can crack over 70 to 80% of all of the world's encryption systems within about 8 hours. So we can use quantum computers in the future to crack 4068-bit encryption in 8 hours. So hackers have a whole variety of new tools. Then we have the rise of digital humans and synthetic content. Recently, we took 1 minute's worth of audio basically from a CEO's voice, a CEO of an energy company in Europe, and got him to phone the CEO of the subsidiary energy company in the UK and ask him to transfer £257,000 into a Romanian bank account. And the voice was so authentic that the UK CEO, this is a FTSE 100 company, you can read about this in the Wall Street Journal, for example, did it. So increasingly, I can use your biomarkers and your biometrics and weaponize them and start using those in new ways. Like this. This is the future of phishing. Those emails.
Hi, I'm Tanya from Banco do Brasil. Thank you for clicking the link we sent you. We noticed some odd activity on your account with us, so as a precaution we've set you up a new account and just need your authorization to protect your money while we investigate the matter further. And don't worry, your money is perfectly safe still. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. We appreciate it.
So that's Tanya. She's another of my digital humans. High-res neural networks. And of course, I could use an Elon Musk filter, or I could use a filter of your boss's face and voice to con you out of money, or whatever it is I want to do.
I Elon Musk?
This is Elon Musk.
Yes. Looks like I got into the wrong conference in Zoom. How are you doing, guys?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I'm nice.
This is amazing.
Nice hair color, by the way.
Thank you.
It's Elon.
Well, then have a nice day. Bye.
Have a
nice day.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a nice day.
So in under 2 years' time, Elon Musk is going to look high def and you won't be able to tell him from the real thing. And I will be able to use his face as a filter to give a presentation, for example. But on the flip side, we also have machines, robo-hackers, that are protecting our critical cyber systems. We have autoimmune systems, basically. So we have polymorphic malware that is actually starting to evolve its own code, like the robots I mentioned earlier. Some hacker ended up creating a self-evolving polymorphic piece of malware, put it into the internet like an internet policeman, and it went off hunting other bad malware and destroying it. This is science fiction, but it is here today and defending systems. We can predict attacks. So by collecting information from the dark web, I can tell you that your company is likely to be hacked by a group of hackers that look like this, using exploits like this. So when big data is aggregated, we can start predicting that you're going to be hacked, and that's from companies like BAE. We have Morpheus computing platforms that reconfigure their hardware and software 50 times per millisecond to avoid being hacked. These are now prototypes and they are coming through fast, particularly in the US military. And then we have quantum signatures. So when I start trying to authenticate you and all your devices have their own quantum signatures. I can use those to your benefit. And I can prove at the quantum level that you are you. So we have a lot of new attacks in the cyberspace. We have a lot of new tools for the defenders. And then finally, transportation. As we start talking, remember, combinations of technology. What you're looking at here is the Terzo Millennio from Lamborghini. It's an electric hypercar. It's due to arrive in about 2030. It doesn't have any lithium-ion batteries because the car's chassis itself is the battery. It's something called a structural battery, where we turn carbon fiber and other materials into the battery. So that is revolutionary. In addition to that, I can use technologies like creative machines. I can use 3D printing to start designing my own vehicles and 3D printing electric vehicles on demand, just like a company called Big Rep have done. And you can design any vehicle that you like. You can 3D print that vehicle complete with all of its batteries, all of its components, and all of its electrical systems straight into the car. That changes how fast we can produce vehicles. General Motors are already using that technology, by the way, as well. And then when we consider the future of transportation, consider this. When we look at fully autonomous vehicles, everything from cars to cargo ships, if I take the steering wheel away, if I take the dashboard away and the pedals, is your car a car or is it a pod? Because if it's a pod, I can do all kinds of things. I can turn it into a shop. I can turn it into a commuter bus for you in the morning. I can also turn it into an autonomous hotel room. So now I'm starting to talk about disrupting air travel or trains in different ways. And this is the great thing about a lot of these technologies. They are so powerful and so capable. We can innovate on top of them like crazy. And because we can innovate so many new ideas and so many new things at speed and at scale, I can disrupt lots of things in lots of different ways. We have pilotless aircraft coming through. This is the first, this is earlier this year. This is an A320. Just to prove that cars aren't the only things going on top. So watch his hands on his controls. This was in France.
Rotate.
So when we start getting artificial intelligence, combining it with sensors, machine vision, and all these different things, you don't just revolutionize one part of one industry, you revolutionize everything. Then we have Hyperloop. So again, over in Abu Dhabi, a couple of years ago, signed the MOU, particularly with companies like DP World, basically to lay down the world's first Hyperloop tracks, basically from around 2021 up to the Burj, or the Burj Khalifa. We have these trains in vacuum tunnels can travel anywhere. At the moment, they're at about 300 miles an hour, but eventually they'll be able to travel at Mach 1. But China's developing a Mach 3 T-flight system, which is the prototype for that is estimated in 2025. This allows, for example, the UAE to move goods from the ports, basically actually sort of where you are, basically with Abu Dhabi ports and DP World, basically inland, basically to be stored faster, so you can increase port capacities. Ports that are increasingly becoming autonomous. And then finally, how about one of these, basically outside of Abu Dhabi? So maybe it's Emirates' platform. This has been flight tested, it's approved by the FAA in the US. It's SpaceX, it's arriving 2024, and they are on track. So, disrupting commuting. If you live in the UAE, how would you like to work every day in Australia? Or if you work in Australia or live in Australia, how would you like to work in the UAE? All of these different technologies are disrupting absolutely every single part of global culture, industry, and society. And because there is so much going on, it's very difficult to get that high-level universal view. So hopefully I've given you a little bit of that view today. That was just the grain of sand in the desert. So thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to your questions. Take care. Goodbye.